Let's take a look at an extremely important year, 1984. What a year 1984 was in the history of professional wrestling. We're going to go through it month by month, all the way till the end. Each magazine as it was released on the newsstands, and we're going to cover all that great history, some of the forgotten history that went down in the year 1984. Starting off with a wrestler, January issue 1984, with Valentine on the cover, soon to be making his way to the WWF. Also Hogan on the bottom with Crusher Blackwell. Hogan also soon to be making his appearance in the Northeast. David Von Erich takes the cover of Inside Wrestling, January 84. Match down in Puerto Rico with Andre the Giant and Abdullah the Butcher. And one of the last looks of Nick Bockwinkel on the cover of a magazine as the AWA World Champion in January 84 Sports Review. Rising star to the Midwest, Rick Martel is leaving the Northeast and is making his rounds through the AWA. Great color pinup in here of Harley Race with the NWA World Championship belt, holding it out, spread out really far. It was one of my favorite shots of Harley. Great poster in that issue. Main Events Wrestling, January 1984, and it's got a throwback picture from the title loss of Fuji and Saito to Gurria and Martel, which caused the split for Martel to head out west. January 84, the main event. Lumberjack Joe and Barry Windham on the cover here. Wrestling Scene, January. I believe Wrestling Scene is every other month as it alternates with All Stars and Ringside. Ringside is the next issue, January. Okay, so they're not alternating with Wrestling Scene, so I guess it's All Stars that they alternate with. Scene, Ringside, and All Stars are all owned by the same people, and George Napolitano took a lot of the photos for that, as well as Main Event Wrestling. This is January 84. Tommy Rich on the cover with Larry Zbyszko from their feud in Georgia. A terrible magazine, Official Wrestling. Terrible as in the worst quality pictures, the worst photos inside. It's a shame that it was such a cheap production. 84, 85, 86, it was about to explode. Tons of magazine companies were going to throw their hat into the ring to make a few bucks because wrestling was about to get extremely hot at this point. And Official Wrestling didn't last but maybe 8 issues. We discussed that in another video. In Japan, Wrestling Photo Album, number 11, it's got Tiger Mask's coverage. This is one of your last looks of Tiger Mask. He's about to retire when he was the WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion here with Dos Caras and Mil Mascaras in Japan. They did a series of 6-man tag team matches together, which were pretty good. David Von Erich, the rising star, taking on Ric Flair for the Missouri Championship, and a bloodied Flair here in February. The wrestler onto a new month now, moving on. February 84, Dusty battling with Abdullah the Butcher and the Sawyer brothers. Tommy Rich and their massive feud with Bud Sawyer and the Mad Dog front and center for one of his last magazine covers. Also signed by Tommy Rich, and Austin Idol up top in a bull rope match with Stan Hansen. Another bloody battle with those two guys. Greg the Hammer on the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. This is February's issue 84. Brett Wayne Sawyer on the cover with a rare shot of Road Warrior Hawk get his face pinned into the corner. Tony Atlas on the cover, Wrestling World, February 84. A match taking place down in Florida. Blackjack Mulligan feuding with Abdullah the Butcher. And this is February 84 All-Star Wrestling. Another match from Florida. Kevin Sullivan taking on the devil himself, Kevin Sullivan, Dusty Rhodes. That is February of '84 wrestling scene. Now, the Japanese magazines are, I didn't bring every Japanese issue out. I just pulled out a couple that I thought were important for 1984. Excuse me. This is your first look at Flair regaining the title for the second time from the previous Starrcade that they just had with Harley Race. The American magazines didn't catch up yet. You know, the 3 to 4 month lag between releases, and the Japanese didn't have a lag, so they were pretty much on top of it just before they went to a weekly issue. It was monthly still at this point. This was Pro Wrestling Monthly Deluxe. This is the taller issue, and it's got Flair's return to Japan for a tour in '84, just after winning the title. And just after Flair winning it back from Harley, I shouldn't say winning it back, but taking it back in Singapore after the loss in New Zealand. We're going to cover that too. Just a little bit out of order yet. So bringing us up to March '84 now. Hogan taking on Harley Race in the NWA, and Tito Santana takes the cover of The Wrestler. Junkyard Dog, who was yet to be WWF bound, almost. He was, we'll go over the Dog in just a few minutes here, as he was scheduled to be part of that big show in the Northeast for the NWA, but was yanked away last minute. But one of your last covers again with the Junkyard Dog by himself on the cover. I believe he's on maybe just 2 more, and that's it. It's from March of '84, Inside Wrestling. Now, March '84, the coverage of Starrcade '84 finally hitting the magazine stands. March's issue, and it covers all the title changes and reigns. Flair winning the title back, Steamboat and Youngblood winning the title back, the dog collar match with Piper and Valentine, who were all about to be leaving the territory. That would be, Steamboat, Valentine, and Piper heading up to the Northeast. Part of the big changes that were taking place. Main Events Wrestling, pretty close to the same cover. George Napolitano's shot here versus Bill Apter's shot here. Take your pick. I always love this shot because it has the whole ring. It's got the guys in the background. You see the cage in the background. I've always liked that shot. Bill's is a little bit bloodier. Take your pick for your favorite. Nobody did it like the Japanese, though, and we're going to take a look at that right now. So this is a MSG, Madison Square Garden tournament, tag team tournament that's held in Japan every year. It was once called the World League. It went on to the Madison Square Garden League, and soon to be the IWGP League. Later on, as we know today, the G1 Climax. And this issue, we're not discussing the Madison Square Garden League. I just wanted to show you the coverage of Starrcade here in full color, if I can find the page. And here is Flair taking the title back for the second time, as it says. Great shot of Flair here, and continues to go through this second page here. Flair and Harley once again. And the color continues, of course, because the Japanese give us full color all the time. There is some black and white in the back when they go to the articles. The Japanese did it a little bit different. All their color photos of the matches were up front and part of the article, and then like the major articles were in the back. Here you see all 3 men after winning the titles, Steamboat, Youngblood, and Flair, which is another great shot on top of Angelo Mosca's head, shoulders rather, patting him on top of the head, is Flair after winning the title. Another fantastic shot these photos were. And then over to All Japan, he's got Brody entering the tournament with Hansen on the other side of Japan there. But great shots of Starrcade in full color. Sadly, we didn't get all that color. The closest we got to it were Napolitano's photos from the Main Event Wrestling, but Japanese, man, they really did it well. Here's your first look at the greatest tag team in history, the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk. This is March '84's issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And we are going to discuss one other title change that happened overseas that wasn't talked about very much, and that's Harley Race is eighth time winning the World Championship. On March 19th, 1984, Flair and Race went on a 3-day tour in New Zealand, and then another 3-day tour after that to Singapore. And unscripted title change was about to happen. This is advertising the Canterbury Christ Church, New Zealand. What a weird name as we would think of it here in the States, but that's the name of the place. And here is a flyer of the match with the dates on it. There's a lot of discrepancies with some guys getting the dates wrong, the title switches wrong, and it's all right here in this Japanese issue, and this has the date of the first night. The first night went to, I'm not sure who actually won the first night. This is the 19th. The next night would take place in Wilmington, New Zealand, and Race would win the title back for the 8th time. Here it states new world champion for the 8th time, Harley Race, and it's a great shot of Harley here holding up 8 fingers, symbolizing his 8th championship. And here it is, just the opposite pictures you see from Christchurch here, New Zealand, from the night before. And Harley taking it. Not many people there. It looks like a pretty small auditorium here in Wilmington. And photos continued on the opposite page. Flair getting rolled up here as he went for a figure 4 against Harley. And here you see Wilmington, Harley getting his hand raised. That's not my camera flare, that's there's in the actual photo. But Harley getting his hand raised once again for the 8th time. They would have a rematch the following night on the 21st in Auckland, New Zealand. And the article goes on to say it was a draw, and they would leave New Zealand. Here is the Auckland match. Harley sitting there. He came to the ring as the champion, left the ring as the champion in Auckland on the 21st, as it was Flair was disqualified for that third match they had in New Zealand. Here are some more photos on this side of the page. They would head to Singapore on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, which this material is covered in this article here. And it would advertise as such, Flair, the NWA World Champion. So in between the travel from New Zealand to Singapore, Flair got the title back. And you can read into that any way you want. They had a match in the airport, they had a match in the locker room, or Harley just handed the title back over and made the NWA happy, and also the promoter in Singapore, because Flair was billed as the champion. On the 23rd, Harley would go on to have a match. I can't remember that. I can't pronounce the guy's name. Willie something or other. Anyway, he would become the first all-Asian world heavyweight champion in Singapore. Here's Harley with the all-Asian title and about to take on Flair. Flair comes out during his match after Race won the title, talking about a matchup between the two, and they would have their match on the 25th. And here it says Flair regains the World Championship in Singapore on the 25th. Flair here in the ring got Harley in a figure 4, which ended the match. So here is pretty rare coverage from a match that was never talked about that much, never mentioned in America, about Harley and Flair, and Harley having his championships for the 8th time. You know, he signed all his autographs, especially at least I know on the ones that autographs that I have from him. He wrote 8-time champion, 8-time NWA World Champion, and some people don't know. They only know of 7 that are documented, but there is an 8th, and it's right there. In Japanese. The only people to cover it were the Japanese and the Japanese issues. Moving on, in March of '84, Wrestling Superstars put out a spring issue, which was released in March, and it's Andre the Giant on the cover with the Destroyer. And Wrestling USA issue number 1, which would become a brand new magazine released by Stanley Weston's company, London Publishing. And this was spring '84 issue number 1. And it's mostly, recycled stories from previous magazines with maybe sometimes 1 or 2, different stories inside. Pictures are usually the same, or different on the cover, but kind of the same inside the magazines. Sports Review Annual 1984 put out a spring issue with Tommy Rich on the cover. New magazine that just popped out with Hogan making the appearance on the issue number 1 of the Winter '83 issue of Wrestling, which just goes by Wrestling by the year. It'd be '83, '84, '85. This is Wrestling '84. Came out in spring. It'd be spring, summer, fall, winter, so it's out 4 times a year. And Snuka would be on issue number 2 for spring. A little bit more like the Main Event, that magazine, but certainly not the same as the Main Event. Main Event, blew that one out, in my opinion. Ringside Wrestling put out an issue in March with the Superfly on the cover. Wrestling Scene capturing Buzz Sawyer and Abdullah the Butcher in a typical Wrestling Scene fashion, which was always a bloody mess. Wrestler Annual, they put a stop to the Best of the Wrestler in 1983-84, brought us the debut of Wrestler Annual rather than Best of the Wrestler. And again, just more recycled stories. I'll take those recycled stories over official wrestling any day. Look at this cover. It's just absolutely awful. Can you tell what's going on? You have Ray Stevens here, who's well past his days in 1984, taking on someone, and he's getting drop kicked. This is a drop kick. I mean, what a horrible photo for your cover. Almost like looking through a piece of film. Terrible. You can see why that magazine wouldn't last very long. The Japanese issues, like I said, we're not going to cover every Japanese issue, just some important ones that I thought, and this is important. This is your first look of an unmasked Tiger Mask, and he is announcing his retirement from wrestling. He wanted to go on to compete in more shoot fighting style. He is the inventor of shoot fighting in Japan, which was a precursor to today's MMA. And Tiger Mask was a legit tough dude, fought and submit for real, especially back in the 80s. It was nothing like that was really around anywhere but Japan and Brazil. So this discusses his final match and his taking off the mask and his new career moving forward. A kayfabe story, if you will, about Hulk Hogan, who is now the World Wrestling Federation champion. That news has not got to an American magazines yet, but March's issue of Weekly Pro Hogan, and it's talking about a made-up story of Bruiser Brody signs with the WWF to face Hulk Hogan, and that is not true, as we all know. Nonetheless, there's a good made-up story and match in those issues, that they have a fantasy match with those two later on. I cover that, and also in a different magazine. Jumbo Tsuruta taking on Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA title while he's defending his NWA the International Heavyweight Championship, which is here. This is only defended in Japan. This was the lineage that Lou Thesz brought to Japan when he fought Ricky Dozan. Went from Ricky Dozan to the Giant Baba and a few other people after Baba. That's that title. And so it was title versus title, NWA International Heavyweight versus the AWA Heavyweight. And Jumbo Tsuruta would take the win over the aging Nick Bockwinkel. And Nick Bockwinkel would be taken kind of a hiatus for several years before he'd come back in around 87 or so. But this is your one and only shot on a magazine. He was on a couple of programs, and then after the fact, well after he lost, he'd appear on another cover with the championship belt. But good shot of Jumbo with both titles. Rare magazine there. That's in March 13th issue of Weekly Pro. Another Japanese photo magazine, and it's got the light heavyweights from the former champions to the future champions to the Dynamite Kid. Dynamite Kid at this point would hand over his I know the glare is killing me. The end of the WWF light heavyweight, junior heavyweight championship, as they call it, and he would form the British Bulldogs and come to the WWF. Another tournament would be held, and it would be the Cobra winning that title. The Cobra was also several matches in Madison Square Garden when we had New Japan and the WWF had a small partnership there in the early 80s up until 84 or so. And this is discussing the Cobra's title win for the WWF Junior Heavyweight Championship. Rare shot of the Cobra. He was a great wrestler. I thought he was excellent, and then he really ballooned up to like well over 250 pounds. Not muscle either. He gained a lot of fat. April 84, still no mention of Hulk Hogan taking the WWF title yet, and he won that belt back in January. This is April's issue, still nothing. I should have brought in a Japanese magazine to show it, because I didn't think of it until now, honestly, because I really don't think about Hogan or the WWF that much. Anyway, Hogan taking on Harley Race here again, and announcing that he is returning to the WWF, and things are about to really change in the WWF. April 84, Blackjack Mulligan again with the Masked Superstar, and Ricky Steamboat talks about quitting wrestling, and of course he just leaves the NWA for the WWF. Mike Von Erich, I'm sorry, I keep calling him Mike, Kevin Von Erich on the cover of April of 84 Sports Review with Bam Bam Gordy and the Freebirds. Finally, Ric Flair back on the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated with his second chance at greatness. I have it here twice, sorry about that. April 84 PWI. And the Iron Sheik is mentioned as the new world champion, defeating Bob Backlund, and not much coverage of the Sheik. I know he's a heel, and heels didn't get it that much. Still, it was big news, and it was big news for 1984 that Bob Backlund had lost the title back in December of 83, but April issue of 84 announcing that the Iron Sheik is the new champion, and Hogan waiting in the wings as he returns to the WWF in the little small corner shot. We got Tony Atlas on the bottom, about to get Boston crabbed by Greg Valentine, who is now back in the WWF as well. This is April 84's issue of Wrestling World. All-Star Wrestling, Wrestling All-Stars, I should say, April of 84, covering the Starrcade match with Flair and Harley. Great cover, if you ask me. Thought it was a great looking shot of those two. This came out every other month, so they're a little late getting the release on this match. I missed one. Damn it. There's another Championship Wrestling before this one. It's February. It's got Mike Rotundo on the cover. Sorry about that. I missed one, guys. This is the second release of Championship Wrestling. This is April's issue. There is another one in February. I must have forgot it. WWF's magazine releasing the first time now Hulk Hogan being featured on the cover of a magazine with the world title. April/May's issue of the first issue of WWF magazine. Pretty good shot, pretty good cover of Hogan there. This is announcing the first WWF UWF heavyweight champion in Japan. It's Akira Maeda, who was the UWF heavyweight champion. If you look real close on the top here, it says WWF, World Wrestling Federation, and UWF, Universal Heavyweight Champion. It was a joint venture, short in 1984 into 85, and then it would close, and then it would come back again in 85, no longer with the umbrella, under the umbrella of the WWF, and strictly just New Japan, UWF. Then, of course, they would have a big split, and UWF would have, I think, three different merges, from twice in the 80s, once in the 90s, and then finally Inoki merged the IWGP title with the UWF title when Nakahipu Takada defeated the Great Muta in '95, I believe it was. A lot of that's covered in our IWGP video that I made. So you can check that out for more in-depth history on that. But a historical shot here, early shot of the WWF's UWF belt, and not many people had known about that joint venture, I guess if you want to call it that, of the two companies together. This issue of Exciting Pro Wrestling. It says Exciting Pro Wrestling here. This has got the issue of the passing of David Von Erich, and I show this, of course, I think in 2 other videos. It covers it, his funeral and the passing of David, and a little tribute to him. In this issue is talking about Tiger Mask retiring, as well as we just mentioned in the last magazine with Tiger Mask on the cover of Invitation to the Ring. This is Gong, and this is April's issue. It also has a memorial to David. So if you see this issue and you wanted some more color shots that were a little bit different, actually there was actually more photos in this one than there was in the last one, Exciting Pros. So Gong's issue has about 6 or 8 pages, a full color of David at his funeral as well, covered pretty good in this issue. Back now another month forward, May 1984, Ron Bass and the Dirty Yellow Dog Barry Windham, or is it Brian Pillman? I'm not sure. The Iron Sheik on the cover with the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship belt in May of '84, and that's pretty much all that you'll see. Now, I understand that McMahon has his own magazine and he banned photographers, independent freelance photographers, from ringside. So therefore, the magazines very rarely had any WWF coverage on the cover, unless there were stolen shots that they had. So they weren't allowed to be at ringside anymore. So there goes a lot of your in-action shots for the WWF. It would mostly be AWA and dominantly NWA territories that were actually quickly closing at this point, mid to late '84. So that's why you'll see a lot less coverage of WWF on the magazines for the next several years, because they were not allowed at ringside. Hulk Hogan on the cover of PWI, May of '84. Another shot of Hogan. This is an older shot of Hogan. I believe this is from Japan, actually. Hogan wins the WWF title, and he wore black all the time in Japan. That's why I'm guessing it's from Japan. Rarely did he wear black in the States. May of '84, the Main Event Wrestling, and there's a centerfold poster of Hogan in this issue. Mike Rotundo taking on Abdul the Butcher in May's issue of Ringside. Another Dirty Yellow Dog shot, Ron Bass taking on Barry Windham in the dog collar match. Very bloody Bass, also a bloodied up Hogan on the bottom. Roddy Piper taking on Ric Flair, May of '84, official wrestling. Also in 1984, 1983, Hulk Hogan won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. And in that tournament ran from May till the end of June, almost July. And this is in 1984. Inoki would face Hogan. Hogan would get the bye because he was the year before's champion. And Hogan would face the winner of the '84 tournament, which was Inoki, and Inoki would come out victorious this year, and he is now the IWGP Heavyweight Tournament champion, and a great shot of Inoki after defeating Hogan for the title, while Hogan was the WWF champion. Yep, it was still champion. In the Northeast, for the first time, looking to invade, not since Buddy Rogers, has the NWA World Champion defended the title in the Northeast. And May of 1984, the NWA had the Night of Champions. And I'll just quickly run off. I got the lineup sheet here, that's why I just took it out. Flair defended the title that he just won back against Ricky Steamboat. Carlos Colon defends the Puerto Rico WWC Championship against Tully Blanchard, NWA TV champion. The Road Warriors, National Tag Team Champions, taking on Jimmy Valiant and supposed to be Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog was picked up and stolen by the WWF, and the dog pulled out at the last minute, and they partnered Valiant up with Jimmy Valiant. Stan Hansen, who is the Pacific Heavyweight Champion. Pacific Heavyweight Champion is the world title that's defended in All Japan. So basically, he's the All Japan Heavyweight Champion, defending the title against Wahoo McDaniel. Kernodle and Koloff, the NWA World Tag Team Champions, against Pistol Pez Watley and Mark Youngblood. And there's another 5 more matches. The Great Kabuki defends against the Invader for the All Asia title, that same All Asia title that Harley Race had just won back in March. All this is a program for that Night of the Champions in the Meadowlands, which was pretty successful for no one really knowing who they were, and just before cable in the Northeast here. Soon to be followed by all that would be Pro Wrestling USA, and that's where we had all that great AWA, NWA TV shows, along with the WWF. And then shortly came Mid-South, Polynesian Pacific, Florida Championship Wrestling, everything but Georgia. I think Georgia was pretty much done at that point. They had that Black Saturday or Black Sunday thing, whatever. McMahon bought the TV time down there. So this was exploded for everybody here in the Northeast. We were all getting familiar for the first time with NWA and AWA wrestlers on our television. So it was really something, man. It was really something to be excited about. All the people that we read about in the magazines, and we're finally get to see them on TV for the first time. It was just a great feeling. Back now the next month, June of '84, David Von Erich and David, We Will Miss You. This is David Von Erich's tribute, written by Bill Apter, who won him Writer of the Year award for this particular article. The article before that, I forget which magazine it was in, Bill caught a lot of shit from the Von Erichs and everybody from Texas, because they wrote something, the Von Erichs, the 3 boys were like the 3 Stooges, and they were kind of bashing David. It wasn't written by Bill, it was written by Dan Shockett, who was the heel columnist for Stanley Weston. No one believed it. Everyone thought Bill owned the magazines because he was the face of the magazine, because he traveled everywhere. He went to all the arenas, took all the photos, and everybody thought that Bill owned the magazines, and he didn't. So the Von Erichs were pissed off at him for writing that article about David, and it came out just at the worst time when David passed away. So Fritz wanted to kill Apter. He got to the point where he was almost like not even allowed to come to the funeral. It was a horrible timing. Bill made up for it. They made friends again, and he took a lot of great shots and promised to put Kerry on the cover as he won the NWA championship. But pretty shitty. Somebody wrote a kayfabe story. Those guys believed it. I mean, kayfabe was real. I mean, people took it serious, and you make somebody look bad and then they pass away, but they don't realize there's a lag between the article time of the magazine released and the actual death. It was written 3 months beforehand, so it kind of sucks. June of '84, Inside Wrestling, Flair and Rotundo. Angelo Mosca Jr. On the bottom with the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship belt. May of '84, Sports Review, a last look at the Assassins with Paul Jones on the bottom. Small shot of Mil Mascaras here, who's kind of like went extinct from the magazines. He spent a lot of time now in Japan mostly, so you wouldn't see a lot of him later on in the '80s. Maybe 1 or 2 more covers. A heel, Ted DiBiase, the Claw, Ted DiBiase, the only Ted DiBiase that I liked him in Mid-South. I hated him with the $1 Million Man bullshit. June of '84. DiBiase was a fantastic wrestler, loved by the fans, and just made a complete asshole of himself in the WWF, if you ask me. And ask many others on this channel, they would agree, I'm sure. June of '84, Sports Review, Barry Windham down in Florida taking on Ric Flair for the NWA title. Again, on the cover of Main Events, June's issue. Billy Jack's debut on the cover of a magazine. More importantly, the debut of Kevin Sullivan's woman on the cover of a magazine, Nancy Sullivan. There is a look at her in the bikini clad on the cover of Wrestling All Stars, and this is June of '84's issue. Japan put out another color photo. These color photo albums are usually with all-American wrestlers. That's why I'm showing these each month. It's a lot taller than your average magazine. A lot of full color inside. Great shot of the Road Warriors here. I know the glare is a killer, especially in these taller issues. July '84. You got Tommy Rich is back, and he'd be back for just a short popularity, and he would disappear again until he made it to the ECW in the 90s. Ric Flair brings the world title to New York, Night of the Champions. We just seen the program 2 months ago. Magazines now are catching up, and this is Flair's first magazine cover since actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Hang on. July of '84, Ric Flair, Inside Wrestling. The fabulous Freebird, Bam Bam Gordy, taking on Ric Flair, July of 1984. Boogie Woogie Man, the Handsome Man, Jimmy Valiant, July '84, PWI. Billy Jack and the Kabuki, '84. Billy Jack's about to leave the Portland area, making his way to Florida for a feud, soon to be with superstar Graham. Hulk Hogan takes the cover of July's issue, Wrestling World. Thought I had one more, but no, I don't. That Flair is screwing me up. I thought I had something else with Flair. David Sammartino, or also going by Bruno Sammartino Jr., and when he was in Georgia, taking on Larry Zbyszko, and this is the last issue for Sports Review Wrestling's annual. This will be your final issue, which was summer of '84. No more of the annuals, which started '76, I want to say, with Ernie Ladd on the cover with the America's Championship belt. That was issue number 1. Just looked at this magazine last video we did with the Magnificent Muscle Men, Wrestling Superstars, summer of '84's issue. Here is your second look at Wrestling USA Wrestling, put out by Stanley Weston. It's also covering a match with Flair and Harley Race. Wrestling '84, got a cover of David Von Erich. PWI Annual, who put out a couple annuals a year in the summer '84. One Man Gang taking on Mike Rotundo in Florida, when the One Man Gang had the long hair before he had the shaved head and tattooed. Ric Flair taking on Barry Windham on the cover of Wrestling Scene, and this is covering Nick Bockwinkel's loss to the Jumbo Tsuruta of the AWA title. So you've seen how long ago I just talked about Jumbo winning the belt, and here is the lag time. The full cover is Flair taking on Windham, not even really a mention of Jumbo winning the title. All the way at the very bottom, you'll see here, AWA's upset in Japan. Bockwinkel loses to Tsuruta. Not much respect for the AWA on the magazines, that's for sure. There wasn't a lot of coverage. They didn't get a lot of press, and it's a shame. One of the final issues of Wrestling, Official Wrestling, July of '84, with Velvet McIntyre and Princess Victoria on the cover. I think it's the last one. I'm not sure. One of the last ones, if not. Wrestling Review is back after a short year hiatus when it merged with The Rings Wrestling and Wrestling News. It's basically Wrestling News, just with the Wrestling Review's name on it. They had bought the company and merged them. You'll still see Wrestling News' logo at the bottom here. And that's about to end also in this final year for them, '84 as well. Kerry Von Erich wins the NWA World title, defeating Ric Flair at the Parade of Champions. Was mentioning after getting back in good graces with the Von Erichs, and it was at this meeting when they patched things up, believed to be Fritz's wife, who kind of squashed the heat between Fritz and Bill, which is good, and promised to put Kerry on the cover, and he sure will, but it's just a couple of months away from the lag time. Here is a bloodied Ronnie Garvin, as he defended the national TV championship from Georgia against Jake the Snake. This was in the Meadowlands, and I don't know if I mentioned it. I cut the last several matches off. I think I stopped it with Kabuki. This was also one of the matches, and Roberts wins the TV title. And it's Bloodied Roberts and Ronnie Garvin. Here is a shot of Jimmy Valiant with Junkyard Dog. Like I said, they were supposed to be tag team partners, and this would have been a magazine to also go along with that Parade of Champions that was in New York. But it was switched out with King Kong Bundy at the last minute, August of '84. That would have been a good tag team. I'm surprised they didn't bring this to the WWF and bring Valiant with them, because Valiant was popular in the '70s in the WWF. Multiple time tag team champions. I think him and JYD would have been decent in the Northeast. The Fabulous Ones, the new Fabulous Ones, okay, sure. August of 1984, Sports Review, Tommy Rich and a young Eddie Gilbert. Jerry the King Lawler making a rare appearance on the cover of a magazine. Another guy you didn't see very much of. The magazines didn't cover a whole lot of Memphis. And here is Jerry the King on the cover, August of '84. And the magazine's now discussing Kerry's win in main events issue of winning the world title against Flair at Parade of Champions. I think I said Parade of Champions when I went to say, not the Parade of Champions from New York. That was the Night of Champions. Let's see, Wrestling World, August '84, Andre the Giant and Dick Murdoch on the cover. Hulk Hogan as the WWF champion on the cover, posing. This is August issue of '84, and your only magazine cover with Hogan with the green belt that wasn't a WWF magazine so far with Hogan. Rare shot with that green belt. Only a couple of magazines picked that one up. Wrestling Scene, August of '84, dog collar match with Mike Graham and Buzz Sawyer. Wrestling Review was back for issue 110 as they go back to the numbers. As I explained in the Rings Wrestling News magazine video I did, it goes from numbers back to dates, back to numbers again. It's a crazy twisted tale of those issues. This is issue number 110, which was released also in July. July has also got Billy Jack as the Florida champion on the cover with Kerry Von Erich on the cover of Wrestling USA America the Best. That's the name of the title. Kerry now on the cover of The Wrestler, as promised, photo taken by Bill Apter, and a great shot of the muscled up Kerry Von Erich. Jumbo Tsuruta defends the title of Rick Martel. Rick Martel takes the AWA world title and surprises the shit out of everybody. I didn't see that coming. Okay, Rick Martel, another humdrum, kind of a boring champion, honestly. He really didn't do much, didn't fill up any seats, and everyone knew it was just a short-term deal for him winning the title. September '84, Rick Martel, who was predominantly a tag team guy his entire career up until here, and now the world champ. September 1984, here is the match from the Night of Champions and the Meadowlands. Flair took on Steamboat, and now it's making a cover of Sports Review. Wow, it's a big lag time for the coverage of this. This actually covered all the matches from the Meadowlands, from the Night of the Champions, it says it here, and also Parade of Champions when Kerry won the title down in Texas. Another shot of the Road Warriors on their second cover of PWI, September of '84. Wrestling World, Flair and Hacksaw Butch Reed on the cover. Rare shot of Hacksaw, not too many covers for him early on in his career, or later on for that matter. PWI put out a annual issue, and it's got the new world champions in the corner. That was Steamboat Youngblood. Wrestling '84 got the Road Warriors on the cover. This is the same photo shoot from their first PWI cover, just in a different pose. Steamboat and Flair from the Night of Champions again. NWA comes to the East Coast. More coverage from George Napolitano and crew from Main Event Wrestling of that great night in wrestling. Also mentions Martel winning the AWA Championship. Shot of Parade of Champions when Kerry won the title on the cover of Ringside Wrestling. This is September of '84. Wrestling Scene, this is September '84's issue. That was Bruiser Brody versus Joe LeDuc. September 84, I believe this is the final issue of the horrible official wrestling. Wahoo McDaniel and Nick Bockwinkel. Talk about two guys well out of their prime by this point to put on your cover of a very beat magazine. You really didn't pick the right people, and when you did, you put them in terrible focus, and the magazine would fold, if not that one more after that. Fall of 84 wrestling superstars, Kevin Sullivan as the Devil, and Kerry Von Erich with the Killer Claw. Wrestling All-Stars Ringside and Wrestling Scene would release the Wrestling Scrapbook issue number 1, and this is mostly just a small article with a full color photo the size of a page inside. So there's one full color shot and then one article about that particular wrestler. I don't know how many they made. I only have the first couple. Wasn't something I really, wanted to continue to buy, but they're not bad at all, especially for some color. There wasn't much color happening in 84. Victory Sports Magazine is another issue, publication rather, that issue number 1 that just happened to pop up, and it would be around for a few years under Stanley Weston's umbrella. Victory Sports issue number 1, fall of 84. Wrestling Review got Magnum TA on the cover, soon to be a hot competitor throughout the NWA right now, still either in Florida or just leaving the Mid-South area, somewhere around there. Finally, a Japanese magazine. We haven't seen one in just a short time, and this is mentioning the return of Tiger Mask, introducing Tiger Mask number 2, and he would be strictly indentured to All Japan Wrestling, no more affiliated with New Japan. So the Giant Baba now has claim to Tiger Mask number 2, and he would go on to have a tremendous career. He would actually die very young, very sad. That would be after he removed the mask and stuff. Another Gongs issue mentioning the retirement of Tiger Mask 1, retiring the mask, and mentioning the new Tiger Mask to come. They had a different mask. His mask was a little more orange. The first one was a little more gold. Japanese photo album list of the new champions now: Martel with the AWA, Hogan now with the NWA, and Flair with the NWA championship. So no more Nick Bockwinkel, no more Bob Backlund, and no more Harley Race. These are the 3 new faces for 1984 and beyond. Of course, when you're talking about Flair and Hogan as your world champions and a company that has the finances to back it, Martel's not going to get much star power competing against these two and the juggernaut they had behind them in the company. Of course, Martel would lose it, a short time after, several months, maybe a year later. Stan Hansen would take it. But Hogan and Flair, of course, would continue to go on and rule the 80s and the 90s. This is, again, a full-color, all-American issue about your champions. It's a good issue to grab if you can find it. It's rather expensive if you find it. Greg Valentine would defeat Tito Santana. After Tito defeated Don Morocco for the Intercontinental belt. This is a good look at Valentine with the Intercontinental belt. Ric Flair taking on Ronnie Garvin in October now, catching up to the fall, almost at the end of this video here. October of 84. Superstar Billy Graham taking on Billy Jack. The Superstar leaves the WWF and moves down to Florida to challenge for the Florida title. Superstar would end up taking that title from Billy Jack and put on a good bloody feud down there. Kevin Sullivan with Dusty Rhodes down in Florida in 84, just before Dusty is about to spend his rest of his career in the Crockett territory in the NWA. Also a shot of Bill Alfonso, the ECW Bill Alfonso of Rob Van Dam and Sabu. Kerry Von Erich's first PWI cover, only PWI cover as world champion, October of 84. Kerry. Chief Wahoo bloodied up against Road Warrior Animal, October 84. Main event. Hulk Hogan on the cover of October 84 Wrestling World Special Issue. Kerry once again as world champion. They're all finally picking up. By this point, of course, he has already lost the title, but the magazines are just catching on to it now from the lag time. All Stars, October 84. Wrestling Review number 12. And it's got just a horrible, non-appealing cover. When you see something like this and you see something, like this, you really see a magazine cover like this, that's not going to appeal to you. If you only got $2 in your pocket, this isn't what you're going to spend it on. And it's just no wonder that these magazines didn't last. You got to put out what people want to see. You got to have, the exploitation is the cover. You don't judge a book by the cover. You judge a magazine by the cover. Absolutely. That's your selling point. And when that's your selling point, you're not going to last long. For the third issue, I'm only showing 2 of these, the Championship Wrestling magazine, which was a good magazine. I like these issues a lot. October of 84, issue number 3. Here is your first look at Tiger Mask 2. Great shot at Tiger Mask 2. He was a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, a little more athletic. Some people had their favorites. I liked the original. I loved Tiger Mask 2. I thought he was awesome. This is in October's issue of Invitation to the Ring, Gong, separate volume, and brings us to November. Now, from the wrestler, Billy Jack and Billy Graham on the cover, November 1984. Here is a program to the night Superstar won the title from Billy Jack. Dusty is now Lord of the Ring. The Lord of the Ring, we discussed this, I believe, in the Dusty video, the tournament that took place down in Florida. And Dusty is the Lord of the Rings. And this is November 84's issue. Great shot of the 2 muscle men, Billy Jack and Kerry Von Erich, on the cover of Sports Review, November 84. Sergeant Slaughter about to leave the WWF shortly, head over to the AWA and try to save them. No luck. He kept them interesting for a couple more years, though, before he went back to the WWF and actually takes the WWF title later on. November 84, PWI of Sergeant Slaughter, Pledge Allegiance to the Fans. Hogan on the cover of November Main Event issue with the green belt. Soon to be changed out very shortly. Wrestling World, November, is Steamboat and Flair. Steamboat and Flair. Again, both of these matches are taking place in the Meadowlands. Wrestling World as well, from the Night of Champions. A little late to the party, but better late than never. Like I said, they can't help it. The Wrestling World and Rings were also on a lag time. Yes, this is the final issue of Official Wrestling. Backlund on one side, Hogan on the other. A little bit better of a cover. Backlund long removed from the championship now, about a year or so. He would have lost the title, but here he is on the cover. Rather than have Hogan on the cover as champion, he may have sold a couple more issues. But they have him here as a heel. November of 84, Official Wrestling. Wrestling Superstars. Winter 84, Wrestling's Sexiest Superstar. Who was your pick, please? And finally, Wrestling USA with their different banner. They would stay with this banner from here on out, where it would have the red, white, and blue USA symbol. The other 2 magazine covers were just kind of all over the place. I guess they were trying to find their fit, and this would be it. And it would mostly be a 4-box cover, which means four photos, 4 boxes, and this would be their pretty typical layout from this point on. Wrestling 84 with the Fabulous Freebirds, now in the AWA, taking on the Road Warriors. A Wrestler Annual got Tommy Rich taking on Ric Flair in winter of 84. WWF would release its second issue. This would be the October-November issue, and it would cover both champions, Hulk Hogan and the ladies champion, Wendy Rector, after she defeated the Fabulous Moolah. And there was a magazine that covered that. I should have mentioned it. It went by so quick they hardly even really showed it. But another expensive issue of both champions. Hogan now for the first time being seen with the new belt, which was the NWA's television belt style. Road Warriors making their appearance on the cover of a Japanese magazine. I believe this one was their first Japanese issue, on the cover of Weekly Pro. November 20th issue of 84 as the National Tag Team Champions. Invitation to the Ring Gong is now showing Tiger Mask 2 for the first time, announcing Tiger Mask 2. November is the kickoff of Starrcade 84. The biggest event follows from Starrcade 83. This is just a program from Starrcade 84. We all know the matches and the lineup from that point. But just a nice program, a rare program from Starrcade. Tully Blanchard taking on Ricky Steamboat in one of the last battles in the Mid-Atlantic area before Steamboat made his way to New York. Hulk Hogan on the cover of December 84's issue of Inside Wrestling. Rick Martel taking on Nick Bockwinkel in December of 84 Sports Review. Good shot of Barry Windham here down in Florida in December of 84. And too bad Barry never got the NWA title when he was in his prime. It would have been a great champion. I would have much rather have seen him champion over Ronnie Garvin. December of 84. Wrestling's main event, and it's got Tito Santana driving the knee up into the Moondog Rex's head. December 84. Kerry taking on Flair in a return bout in December of 84 Wrestling World. All-Star Wrestling with the Freebirds on the cover of December 1984. And I think there's a poster here. Is this the one with Kevin Sullivan? Yeah, this is the one with Kevin Sullivan with the devil getup, and now he has a woman with her. A great shot of a woman in that bikini posing with Kevin Sullivan. And really, who cares about Kevin Sullivan? It's a great shot of Nancy Sullivan right there, biting and licking the snake. Great shot of the devil himself, Kevin Sullivan. That is in the December issue of All-Star Wrestling All-Stars. And finally, the last issue of 1984, December, will be your first look at the Rock and Roll Express. And notice the bandanas and the mustaches on both. Pretty horrible look of the Rock and Roll Express. I'm glad they got rid of those stupid looking stashes. This is December's issue, and also the final issue of Wrestling Review before it went to strictly just wrestling news, but they didn't use the wrestling news name. Again, very confusing. Your last issue of Wrestling Review. And that is in under an hour, which was perfect because I was trying to keep this one a little bit quicker. A nice look back at the year 1984 in the magazines. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll catch you on the next one.